Hi everyone, today I'm going to cover Bitcoin, a bold new world. As we enter 2021, we see the end of 2020 and we look at 2021 as a fresh start. And that's exactly how Satoshi thought about Bitcoin when he looked at the existing financial system and how it could represent a fresh start by creating Bitcoin, which would be an entirely new one, not based on trust. And so we're going to dive in a little bit on the newsletter that I wrote last Thursday. Again, you can receive this first if you Google Dan Held's Substack and subscribe to my newsletter. And then I cover it over the weekend in video format, which is what you're watching now. So Satoshi published the white paper on October 31st, 2008. So, and this was right in the middle of peak despair. Trust had been lost in a world that ran on trust. And by the way, if you want to dig in a little bit deeper, my article Planting Bitcoin is a great place to start there. So, but why October 31st? Why that date specifically? He wasn't exactly like a fan of Halloween and just thought it'd be funny. He was very intentional with everything he did about Bitcoin. And he had actually been working on Bitcoin for at least a year and a half before publishing the white paper, which was released again on October 31st. Satoshi says, "I believed I've worked through all those little details over the last year and a half while coding it. There were a lot of them. The functional details are not covered in the paper, but the source code is coming soon." And then in August, he registers bitcoin.org. And so he's building up to this moment of October 31st. And why October 31st? What's so special about that date? So I think, and Satoshi did not reference this is largely an extrapolation of mine, but I think that Satoshi published the white paper on October 31st as a hat tip to the ancient Gaelic festival of Samhain, and which is also the date that Martin Luther King nailed his 95 Theses to a church door. Both represent the end of the old and the beginning of the new. So Samhain comes from this region, so Irish and Scottish region of the Great Britain, and this was so that's when we look at Gaelic, I had to look up exactly the region. This is the Gaelic region. So it originated from this region and was an ancient Celtic festival. So they would paint themselves. It represented the end of the life cycle and the beginning of the death cycle. So the end of the harvest and the beginning of the winter. And so these are some depictions of how that might have looked. Not many folks, I don't think folks really celebrate the original holiday anymore. It's transitioned to other holidays over time, and that's what I'm going to cover next. So Samhain became All Saints' Day, or our modern Halloween, or All Hallows' Eve, which is a major, and the Catholic Church created this because they wanted to bring in the pagans into the Catholic religion. So they're like, well, what if we adopt some of their holidays? Because a lot of people are like, man, I really love this holiday. I'd really hate if I switch religions if I couldn't celebrate that anymore. And so they created All Saints' Day. Naturally, kind of a trend, a much bigger pivot away from the original Samhain, which represented the end of end of life and the beginning of death, the end of seasons. Martin Luther felt that it was time for a change in the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church was ripe with fraud, and we had different. I don't know if many people have heard about this, but in the Catholic Church, you could pay to have your sins erased, and this is a depiction of that, where folks are paying to have their sins erased. So the Catholic Church had strayed really far away from any sort of semblance of a real religion. It had become an institution that took money at the on the behalf of very poor citizens and sold them things that were very disingenuous. And this went straight to the church treasury, which allowed those in power to continue their lavish lifestyle at the expense of all of those masses. And Martin Luther undermined the authority of the Pope through his 95 Theses, starting a process of reformation. His ideas became super popular and totally changed the rest of the world. For this led to a lot of different revolutions. This led to a huge change in the Catholic Church versus Protestant Church. And Satoshi, I think, similarly felt outraged at the breach of trust with existing financial systems. Just as Martin Luther felt outraged by the egregious breach of the moral code that the Catholic Church had done, Satoshi felt the same with the financial institutions. And we see this with Satoshi's writing, and this was his writing, his first writing right after he published the white paper, February 11th, 2009. And so right after he tells this P2P Foundation, which was kind of a nerdy You think of it as like a nerdy forum. He tells everyone, hey, by the way, I built this thing called Bitcoin. You should check it out. Give it a try. And then the first thing he says right after is the root problem with conventional currency is all the trust that is required to make it work. The central bank must be trusted not to debase the currency, but the history of fiat currencies is full of breaches of that trust. Banks must be trusted to hold our money and transfer it electronically, but they lend it out in waves of credit bubbles with barely a fraction of reserve. So Satoshi, very much like Martin Luther, wanted to make a statement that the old system was not working. These old institutions were broken and corrupt, and that's why he built Bitcoin. And Satoshi didn't just build Bitcoin out of this vapor. He built it off of 40 years worth of advancements. And in this image, it's called Bitcoin's prehistory, which is a representation of all the innovations that came before Bitcoin that enabled Bitcoin to succeed, which is pretty wild to see. For when I first got into it, I thought that Bitcoin was just kind of a random creation, but no, it was actually like the building upon many other innovations. And so just like how the printing press enabled the spread of Martin Luther's ideas, Bitcoin's blockchain enabled Bitcoin to be transmitted and accessible anywhere in the world as well. They both carefully chose October 31st to announce their ideas, symbolizing death and renewal. Both saw the imprisonment of people by the legacy system and suggested that ousting the existing authority would be the solution to the problem. Bitcoin ultimately represents the end of fiat and the beginning of a new monetary standard. And that's where I leave you with 2021, or we should begin 2021 with saying, let us go forth boldly and build a new world built upon Bitcoin. Nikola Tesla has a phenomenal quote that the present is theirs, the future for which I have really worked is mine. And that's what we're all doing here. That's why we believe in Bitcoin. We're building a new financial system. Hope everyone enjoyed. And I'm sure you noticed the Hawaiian shirt. I'm currently on vacation, so I hope you liked it, and give me a like. Also, leave me a comment if you'd like. I check all of them, and I'll be happy to reply. Cheers. Bye.